she wasn't crying because she was sad. She was crying because she knew that I was hurting. And it was in that moment that I knew that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her because she loved me that much. Yeah, before meeting Kaylee, I grew up in a very loving home, very supportive. We grew up in the Catholic Church, and I came to know God as just someone who was just big and powerful. I knew He loved me, but I didn't know if He loved me for all of me. And just growing up, we went to church on Sundays. I went to a private Catholic school, and we went on Fridays. But it was nothing too particular to where I had an intimate relationship with God. It was more, let's go there, let's check a box, and let's just do all these things. In high school, I had a couple buddies, and they were some awesome friends to me, and we just kind of ran together. Besides them, didn't really have any other friends, any other community besides them, but they were just my go-to guys. When it came to my life, I just wasn't living really a God-honoring life, just in the way that I lived and the way I held my relationships. And I just knew God was strong and mighty, and bad people, quote unquote, went to hell, and good people went to heaven. And I 100% was on the bad side of things. And so it was more a fear of like, oh dang, well if I'm going to hell, might as well had nothing. No, don't even try because there's no hope for you. And that was just my life. I ended up getting introduced by a family member to a church called Watermark Community Church in Dallas, to their Christmas service. And I went there, and the pastor at the time just gave me a message, and it just kind of hit home. And I just went home that night just thinking totally different about this God, which led to me just going between that church, Watermark, and my previous church that I was going to, and just kind of wrestling with who God was. And I went by myself for a couple years, and I just found myself just so hungry and curious for this good news that had been preached to me every week about how there's salvation and there is grace and there's hope for people who don't know Him, and for His people, and for people who are lost and depressed and anxious and so on and so on. And I kept hearing it, but it was hard for my heart to accept it. Until one day in 2019, I approached this church as far as becoming a member, and I ended up meeting this guy who shared the gospel with me, and basically in a whole new way. And he had just shared it to me, and that was as clear as day. And he just fully shared the gospel, and I told him my whole story. Stuff that I thought I was taking to the grave, stuff that I thought that no one would ever find out about me. And he assured me that God still loved me. And in that moment, I gave my life to Christ, and I decided from that moment on that I would be serving Him. And that even though there would be times when I would be apart from Him, or times that I just felt away from Him or just isolated, He was still there. And that's when my journey changed.
Before I met Jonathan, I was raised in a Christian home I was raised to be like a leader in the church. We were always in ministry, and we were just at the church all the time. The church was my family, and that was really all I knew aside from school. However, when I became a teenager and got into high school, I kind of started figuring out the ways of the world, and I let, the comfortability of church kind of just move me toward the world and how they did things, because it was something that I had never seen or known before. And so high school was a rough go for me, just with the relationships that I had built. And when I did graduate, I was in a season where everything was becoming new. I had found a new church, some new friends, a new community. I was just surrounded by better community that I had ever known or seen before, felt loved more than I ever had before in a church. I had gone to school to pursue a career in dentistry, and that took me about 2 hours from my home and everything that I had known. And talk about environment in high school, it was 10 times the environment in college, just surrounded by the most worldly people and stuff I had never ever seen in my life. Had only seen in movies is what college was like for me. Um, and in that time, I had no friends. I knew nobody in the town. And the only person I really had to lean on was the Lord. And I had had a relationship with the Lord my whole life, but it never became my own relationship with Him until I was so isolated and alone and never had anyone um, to kind of base my relationship with the Lord off of. It was just kind of me and Him, and the only friend I had and the only person I had to talk to really. After one semester of being in college, I was like, this is not for me. I'm very thankful for this time because it really developed my own relationship with the Lord and just kind of fell in love with Him in that season. And so I was able to come back home and just really give all I had to the ministry, to serving, to just growing my relationship with the Lord in a lot of different areas. And yeah, that was just before I had met Jonathan.
By the grace of God and His awesome timing, me and Kaylee actually met on a up and coming new dating app. It was something that was for Christians, and it seemed like everyone was from all over the world, but luckily we were only about 20, 30 miles from each other. And that's when everything started. I slid in her DMs per se, and we went on our first date, and it was awesome. I think I just wanted someone who was on fire for Christ. When I was looking for someone to date, I had a high expectation of what my household was going to look like into marriage, and usually when you meet somebody online, you can have a low ball and not feel like your expectations are going to be met. And so when I met Kaylee, she exceeded those times 100, and it was awesome.
Was just looking for a leader, a godly man, a God-focused man. Um, a lot of the a lot of the people I came in contact with in that season were just there looking for a relationship, and I was kind of just looking for a guy who had a relationship with the Lord, and that was what caught my eye when he first reached out to me because the first question he asked me was, how long have you been, how long have you had a relationship with the Lord? And that was the first question anyone had asked me that had anything to do with the Lord. That wasn't a cheesy pickup line. And I loved that. And that was just kind of what caught my eye. There was a season where we had just parted ways and we had I had kind of distanced myself from him and we were on a break and but Jonathan was just super consistent and he persevered through our break and he just continued to reach out, continued just to ask me how I was and he had asked me many times to go to dinner with him throughout this season that we were apart and I just kept saying no. And then one day he had asked me to go to dinner and I just wasn't texting him back. And then it was coming pretty close to dinner time and I still hadn't texted him back and I had just gotten off work and um, something just made my fingers type, yeah, let's go to dinner. And I didn't even realize that I said yes until I was in the parking lot and I was like, what am I doing here? And we kind of just went in, just really expecting just to catch up as friends, not anything more. I think was both of our intention, and we just sat in a restaurant for about 3 to 4 hours and just catching up. And it was just his persistency and perseverance that kind of just like stuck with me and just shocked me. And I was like, man, I've never felt so pursued in my life, and I feel like I'll always be this pursued if I do pursue a relationship with him. And um, my pride won't let me say that it is the moment that I wanted. I knew that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with him, but it was. And it was all because of his persistency.
There was a season of my life where I was just not doing well, and I was just struggling with some anxiety and just feeling really sad for a good period of time. And during one night, we were just talking and we're having a late night talk in the car, and I was just kind of sharing where I was at, and I just wasn't doing well, and I just started crying. And I'm kind of just to myself, as I'm like, I'm a grown man, I shouldn't be crying. I was just kind of trying to be strong, and I look over and I see that she's crying, and the reason it hit me was because she wasn't crying because she was sad. She was crying because she knew that I was hurting. And it was in that moment that I knew that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her because she loved me that much. That my pain became her pain. And that was a love I had never felt before. And a love that I would cherish until the day God calls us apart in heaven.
The wife I hope to be for Jonathan is just someone who's supportive of him and everything that he does. I know he is such a hard worker and will do anything, to support me and our future family. And so I want to be the person who's just his biggest cheerleader, his supporter, and uh, just cheering him on in everything that he does.
So let me tell you about the day I proposed. Kaylee believed that we were just going out for a family dinner. And so she had no clue. At least she said she didn't. And um, we hadn't had any intentional time in a while. And so I just said, hey, Lee, let's go be intentional and hang out before. And little did she know it was going down. And we went to this place, and we were standing on a rock over the lake. And then I just remember getting down on one knee and pulling out the ring. And she's like, are you joking? And I'm like, no, I'm not joking. And then
This time.
this time that I had maybe done it once or twice before, I felt like I was tying my shoe. And yeah, and then it was great. And my photographer got it from a distance away, and we got to celebrate with family and go out to eat because who doesn't like to go eat after you have a good big moment? And that's how it ended.
My dream for mine and Jonathan's marriage is just for God to use our story and use it as a testimony for others, um, just to know and to be confident that no matter, what you've been through, what your past looks like, and how you get there, the Lord is always there. And we just hope our relationship and our marriage is a model to everyone who sees, and that we're able to, just love people like Christ loved us and love each other like he loves us.
Amen, sister. This is just a guess, but I feel like we'll be in ministry together, in a formal way. That we'll be in some church, either leading some youth or young adults, and using that as our ministry to serve God. And I think that'll be awesome because especially as we have kids, and it helps us grow and just the people that we've been around. So just by learning from others and just continue to grow as individuals, we don't want to be that couple after marriage who just goes off and rides into the sunset. We want to be the couple who is actively involved with mentors, and then being a mentor and also being mentored by others, and continuing just to grow in our walks with the Lord, and as we use our story to be something that helps others.